On April 13th, Vanity Fair released the first official image of Denis Villeneuve's new adaptation of Dune. The image was of Timothee Chalamet as Paul Atreides, the main protagonist of Dune, walking along the beach of the Atreides homeworld Caladan. And they said it was just part one of their preview, and the next day they would provide an even more expansive exploration of Villeneuve's quest to bring Dune to the screen. The second part of this piece definitely gives a more in-depth behind-the-scenes look at the creation of Dune and a look at most of the main characters. There are things I really like about this first look, and there are some things I really don't care for. I'll go ahead and break each picture down and the article that goes with it. One thing I was really hoping to see in the second part of this release was the Fremen stillsuit, and I was not disappointed. The first picture we see is of Paul Atreides and his mother Jessica on Arrakis. I really like that we had the stark contrast of the picture that was released earlier of Paul on Caladan to this. We're on a completely different world. The colors are warm, the landscape completely different. It's definitely representative of the jarring change that these characters have had to adapt to. The outfits that we see on Paul and Jessica are called stillsuits. Suits meant to preserve every bit of your body's moisture. In David Lynch's 1984 film, these suits were a deep black material, which I always thought was a bit odd seeing that they were on a desert planet, and black would seem to be impractical. Not only would it be extremely hot, but it would also stick out against the desert landscape. These suits we have depicted in this article seem to have more natural tones in them, and they also appear to have the complexity and design that would be fitting for such a highly sophisticated outfit. In the article, Timothee comments on the otherworldly feeling of the landscape, as well as the unbearable heat of the location they were shooting in. This, I think, will definitely add a realism to the film that would be difficult to achieve if they had chosen to shoot these scenes in a studio. The next picture we have is a photo of Zendaya as the character Liet Kynes. I think she looks great in this image. I know that there is some controversy regarding how the blue within blue eyes of spice saturation have been depicted in previous adaptations. In this image, we can see Chani's eyes are a deeper blue than the previously depicted glowing and bright blue that we saw in the 1984 film and the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries. The article then goes on to describe spice as mind-altering and time and space warping. It is certainly mind-altering, but the description of the spice itself being time and space warping is not accurate. In short, spice heightens awareness and enables the ability to see into the future to varying degrees. The spice helps the guild navigators to foresee and chart safe paths through the galaxy, which is essential for space travel. The Bene Gesserit use it in much smaller doses to see into the past through their female ancestral memories, as well into future events to a limited degree. Either way, this description of it being a time and space warping substance is not very accurate, and is sure to draw criticism from classic Dune fans. Next we see depicted the members of House Atreides. In the back, I noticed their house's emblem depicting what looks to be a silver hawk over a green and black banner, their house's colors. In the books, the hawk is supposed to be red, however this appears to have been an adjustment they've made, probably to fit the feel and style Denis is going for. You can also see what looks to be hawk's wings depicted on their collars. Otherwise, their uniforms have a very minimalist look. I like the way Duncan looks in this photo. I know there have been concerns about whether or not he'd be too bulky for the role of a nimble swordsmaster, but he looks about right to me. I can't wait to see him in action. Next up, we get a nice photo of Denis on the set, directing the Fremen tribe led by Stilgar, portrayed here by Javier Bardem. Javier seems to be a hand-in-glove fit as far as the casting goes, and he fits right in here. Again, I like how their still suits blend into the scenery better than previous adaptations. These suits have the tones you would see in a nighttime desert landscape scene, which is when the Fremen are the most active on Arrakis. Following this, we get 3 close-up shots of Josh Brolin's Gurney Halleck, Rebecca Ferguson's Lady Jessica, and Oscar Isaac's Duke Leto. A few things that stand out in these pictures for me. First of all, I like the armor on Leto and Gurney. I think it's possible that the still suits are underneath this armor, but it's hard to tell. If they are going into the open desert, they definitely need to be wearing them. Overall, I really think these outfits give a warrior feel to Gurney and Leto. It really helps to emphasize the danger they are going into. We might be looking at a scene where they are going to check out the spice operations, as you can clearly see a vehicle known as a thopter or ornithopter in the background, which is what they use for travel on Arrakis. We also see Lady Jessica depicted in a black robe. If you'll notice, the atmosphere behind her seems to be the same as the first image that was released of Paul on Caladan. I'm guessing this is from the scene where she is meeting with the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohayim. A terrific scene to say the least. The article goes on to talk about the expansion of Lady Jessica's role in this film. It says, in the script, which Villeneuve wrote with Eric Roth and John Spates, she is even more fearsome than before. The studio's plot synopsis describes her as a warrior priestess. As Villeneuve jokes, it's better than Space Nun. Lady Jessica's duty is to deliver a savior to the universe, and now she has a greater role in defending and training Paul too. She's a mother, she's a concubine, she's a soldier, says Ferguson. Denis was very respectful of Frank's work in the book, but the quality of the arcs for much of the women have been brought up to a new level. There were some shifts he did, and they are beautifully portrayed now. There are a few things I take issue with here. First of all, many Dune fans feel that Lady Jessica could be described as the main character of this book. She's focused on just about as much as Paul is in the source material, and Frank Herbert wrote her as a fierce, strong, capable, complex, and interesting character. I feel that it's unnecessary to bring her up to a new level because she is already one of the most powerful characters in the story as it is. I think perhaps too many things are being referenced here from David Lynch's 1984 movie. The Bene Gesserit were never described as space nuns when referencing the book. That description only came from Lynch's portrayal of them. But I digress. The next image we have is another picture of Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho. As I mentioned previously, some fans were concerned that Momoa wouldn't look nimble or agile enough to properly portray Duncan. But I think that's what they are trying to capture here, as we can see him in what looks to be a scene taking place after the attack. Next up, we have what definitely concerns me the most about this article. It's no news that Sharon Duncan-Brewster has been cast in the role of the now gender-swapped character, Dr. Liet Kynes. I have covered my thoughts on this gender swap in another video, but ultimately I didn't have too much of a problem with them making this choice. I just wanted it to fit into the story, and for them to have a good reason to make this change. However, this article includes some details regarding the change that really bother me. It says, although always depicted as a white man, the character is now played by Sharon Duncan-Brewster, a black woman. What Denis had stated to me was there was a lack of female characters in his cast, and he had always been very feminist, pro-women, and wanted to write the role for a woman, Duncan-Brewster says. This human being manages to basically keep the peace amongst many people. Women are very good at that, so why can't Kynes be a woman? Why shouldn't Kynes be a woman? If we're using that logic, then I could very well ask the question, why can't Samwise Gamgee be a woman? Why couldn't Dumbledore be a woman? Or why couldn't Grandpa Joe from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory be Grandma Joe? Quite simply, because they weren't written to be women. Also, the fact that this article highlights that Kynes was previously portrayed always as a white man seems to be putting the issue of racial inequality into a story that it was never in the first place. I don't appreciate that their reason for this change is simply, why not? Or that it is simply a numbers reason, trying to bump up the number of women in the story. I feel that neither of these are legitimate reasons to change an adaptation of this beloved piece of science fiction. I also don't appreciate how it brings out that Liet was always cast as a white man. So the 2 times over these last decades that Dune was adapted, they both were white men. Aside from the fact it sounds like adapting this book happens all the time, They ignore the fact they were cast simply by how they were described in Frank Herbert's book, and there's nothing wrong with that. It derides previous adaptations for not making the same decision Denis did. Overall, this article seems to be poorly written. It gets some things right, but I feel the writer does not have a good grasp on the source material, or have any appreciation for it for that matter. Again, a lot of my issues seem to stem from the writer himself. Sometimes the phrasing he uses seems to be dumbed down and inaccurate. So those are my major issues with this piece here, but I would like to end this video on a positive note. The images look amazing. The cast looks great in their roles. The Fremen and the still suits look very accurate to the source material. I do hope, however, that Frank Herbert's work can shine through here. He was an amazing writer and crafted a story so intricate and dynamic it has endured through the decades as one of the best stories in science fiction. At the end of the day, I look forward to being immersed into this universe once again. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and be sure to subscribe for more Dune and other sci-fi and fantasy content. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this article also. What do you like? What do you not like, if anything? Are you hopeful for this new adaptation or slightly nervous? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for your support, and as always, have a very nerdy day.